HDR Imaging. In this tutorial, we will show you how to enhance the image quality using high dynamic range imaging and tone mapping. One of the key characteristics of an image sensor is its dynamic range, the ratio of the largest and the smallest number of photons in a sensor pixel, which can be converted to electrons. In terms of image quality, this describes the ratio between the brightest and darkest perceivable light conditions of the image sensor. In many cases, the dynamic range of image sensors is not sufficient to fully reflect differences in brightness in the scene, resulting in overexposed or underexposed areas in the images. If you capture an HDR image, which needs more than 8-bit for quantization, you will not be able to visualize the full range of the image. The image has to be converted to a lower dynamic range for display purposes, commonly referred to as tone mapping. The tone mapping algorithm matches humans' brightness sensation of the image closely to the real-world brightness sensation, such that the image looks more realistic when displayed on a monitor. So activating the tone mapping algorithm and the 16-bit image processing pipeline is mandatory for HDR imaging. This can be done in the HDR section of the Image menu. Activate the Enable and 16-bit checkboxes to do this. The intensity slider allows you to adjust how much dark areas of the image will be lightened. Generally, HDR images look a bit flat, so it is useful to increase the contrast a bit. Use the HDR contrast slider to do this. If a sensor supports a higher bit rate than 8-bit per pixel, then IC Measure offers you the 16-bit image formats to acquire the data. All quantizations within 9 to 16 bits per pixel are encoded in 16-bit channel formats. The new Sony Global Shutter CMOS image sensors feature the capability of multiple exposure. This is used in IC Measure to increase the dynamic range algorithmically. Images are acquired with different exposures, from the very dark to very light. This lets you capture the details in the brightest highlight or the darkest shadowed areas. These images are merged together to create an HDR image. Open the Settings dialog by clicking on the Settings button in the Device menu and select the Multi-Frame Output section. Check the Active checkbox in order to enable the multiple exposure output of the camera. While taking exposure conditions into account, the integrated stacking algorithm generates complete HDR images. If the stacking checkbox is checked, the exposure bracketing will be combined to an HDR image. Otherwise, the single images will be displayed. In IC Measure, the different exposure times can be set both automatically and manually. The auto exposure for multi-frame output works well under constantly changing lighting conditions. However, it is recommended to manually preset this setting for best results. To do this, deactivate the auto checkbox. Thank you for watching, and please have a look at our other tutorials.